Hello guys and welcome to class.
Cuerpo, sara mo na yan!
This is the science subject and we are working on class number 2. Alright, so let's continue. There you go. So here we have our topic and ending mind for today. We are studying lesson number 2, weathering, and our ending mind is the following. Compare the natural weathering processes to the Guatemalan environment and conclude if it is possible to find a relationship among them. It's ideal if you take a picture, a screenshot of something from the ending mind in the topic, because you will use that later on. And also we have our summary of activities right here. So please read lesson number 2 and conduct an investigation about the way weathering can be applied to the Guatemalan context. Share your conclusions during the live session. It's important that your investigation is found in your notebook. So after, of course, you have read lesson number 2 and you have gone on Google searching for some information, that you write down a small summary of what you actually found out right there. And remember to include the notebook format. The one that we have always worked on with the date. We also have the title, ending mind, and then the content of your summary and investigation. And please finish on time so you don't have a lot of homework today and end up like this guy right here. Alright, so let's start with our topic. And right now we're going to start with break it down. What is weathering? Which is the title of our topic right now. So weathering is a breakdown of rock material by physical and chemical processes. Two kinds of weathering are physical weathering and chemical weathering. We're going to study a little bit more about them, and we're going to find out about the specific differences that we can find in each one of them. So let's continue. And right here we have an example of what physical and chemical weathering might look like. So at some point, let's say that these rocks were a little bit more plain and they were like complete rocks. But due to all of the environmental factors around, like the wind, the rain, etc., and the pieces of rock started to fall down and they will start to look like this right here. Just like you can notice, there are even some plants that are growing around this part right here from the rock. Looks that it's been cracked out by several things a long time. So that is basically weathering. After the rocks or several materials are exposed to the weather conditions, they will change. They will break down, or even they can have like some plants or other chemical processes going around in them. Okay? That's weathering basically. But what causes physical weathering, which is one of the two types of weathering that we are learning about today? Physical weathering is a process by which rock is broken down into smaller pieces by physical changes. The composition of the material does not change during the physical weathering. And agents of physical weathering include temperature changes, pressure changes, plant and animal actions, water, wind, and gravity. So let's imagine the situation. Let's imagine that there is one goat or a group of goats that are actually going up towards the top of a hill. So they're going to start, walking at the top of some material. And since they are going to be hitting the ground, let's say, some of the pieces from that ground can actually fall off and they will change of place. That is an example of physical weathering, because we are not changing the chemical composition of the rock. The only thing that we are doing is breaking it down. By, in this example, will be when goats go around stomping on the floor. All right, let's continue. We have some more information about this. Changes in temperature can cause a rock to break apart by weakening the structure of the rock. Heat causes the rock to expand. Cold causes it to contract. And ice wedging or frost wedging causes cracks in rocks to widen with repeated cycles of freezing and thawing. Let me relate this a little bit to the weather in Quetzaltenango. So you know that in Quetzaltenango we have several weather changes. So in the morning it's very cold, but in the afternoon is a little bit warmer or it's hotter. So when a rock is actually exposed to those changes in the temperature, it can even break. Because just like it's mentioned here, heat is going to cause it to expand or to make it bigger. And when it's cold, then it's going to contract. So in Quetzaltenango, again, let's say that at 6 o'clock a.m., since it's very cold, some rocks are going to contract. They are going to become smaller. But later on in the afternoon, since it's a little bit hotter, let's say, they are going to expand. And after contracting and expanding, they are going to break and they will fall apart. All right, and how can a small crack in a rock eventually split the rock into two or more pieces? Well, again, if the exposure to climate conditions are way constant, then the rocks are going to eventually break. And rocks that form under pressure deep within earth can be exposed to the surface. As material is removed above the rock, the pressure decreases and the rock expands. Exfoliation is the process by which the outer layer of rock slowly peel away due to pressure changes. This concept is very important, so if you want, you can highlight it, you can even write it down in your notebook. Exfoliation. So basically it means that let's say that the layer that is recovering the rock is going to start to break away, or it's going to start to peel. All right, and animals can cause physical digging burrows. And new rock, soils, and other animals become exposed as the surface as a result of animals' actions. And materials exposed at the surface are more likely to undergo weathering than those below. So it depends on the animals that we are studying, of course. So I don't know if you have seen these animals that are, they have a very Guatemalan name. We call them tuzas. So basically they are animals that live underground. So let's suppose that this is the ground that we have right at the top. It's the surface. So basically what they do is that they start craving and digging inside the ground. So they start digging and digging under and under until they open a hole right there that is going to make basically their home. It's going to be where they are going to live at. So that's another example of a physical change, or it's part of physical weathering. Because animals are actually interacting with materials such as the ground or such as rock in order to build up their homes. Okay, let's continue. Now we have another important term, which is abrasion, which is the breaking down and wearing away of rock material by the mechanical action of other rocks. So we have already said that actually rocks can split apart. They can change and break into pieces. But what happens if, let's suppose that we have a big rock at the top of a mountain and a huge piece from that rock actually falls apart and actually it hits another rock that is right at the bottom. Of course, what's going to happen is that it might change. It might actually break the rock that is right at the bottom. That's what we call abrasion. Three agents of physical weathering that can cause abrasion are moving water, wind, and gravity. Rocks suspended in a glacier can also cause abrasion of other rocks on Earth's surface. Alright, so here's an example of what physical weathering might look like. So due to all of the exposure to, well, probably animal contact, we can have also the exposure to other rocks that actually hit this one right here, or even the temperature that will cause it to contract and to expand, at the end resulted into the breaking of this huge rock right here. That is an example of physical weathering again. And roots of plants start out as tiny strands that may grow in small cracks in rocks. As the roots grow, they put more pressure on the rock, causing the rock to expand and eventually break apart. So right here we have a very beautiful plant, and that's another example of what will happen with physical weathering. So like the roots from the plant will start entering the rock, and after a time, if the roots of the plant are quite big, they are going to cause some cracks like the ones that you can see right there in the picture. I know there are a lot of examples of physical weathering, but if you want to, you can go back on the video or rewatch this part so you can understand it a little better. And this will be your teacher if you remember all the causes for physical weathering. I feel good. All right, let's continue. So we have what causes chemical weathering. Notice that chemical weathering is different than physical weathering. Chemical weathering is the breakdown of rocks by chemical reactions. Chemical weathering changes both the composition and appearance of rocks. Here we have the main difference. So remember that in physical weathering, only the structure or the shape changes, like it can be broken down into several parts. But in chemical weathering, actually the composition or the appearance is going to change in the rock. Agents of chemical weathering include oxygen in the air and acids. Here we have another important term, which is oxidation, which is the process by which chemicals in rock combine with oxygen in the air or in water. So at some point, some rocks can actually get to a river, for example. So in the river, the rocks are going to start to mix up with some of the oxygen that is actually within the water right there. So when the composition of the rock is mixed out with the oxygen from the water, the composition in the rock changes, which makes it a chemical weathering process. Rock surfaces sometimes change color, indicating that a chemical reaction may have occurred. Here we have an example of oxidation. I'm pretty sure that this seems familiar to you. So when you have a very fresh and nice apple and you cut it, you are going to find out that the inside of the apple is white. But what happens if you just let the apple rest right there? After a time, it's going to look like the apple that you see in the picture. It's going to start actually getting a different color, like orangish or brownish. But this happens because of oxidation. So the inside of the apple is starting to mix up with the oxygen that you can see around the air in the environment. Due to that mixture in the components of the inside in the apple, a chemical change is caused. Something similar happens with rocks as well, when they mix up with oxygen. Acids can cause chemical weathering by breaking down minerals faster than water alone. Acids in the atmosphere are created when chemicals combine with water in the air. And here we have something that is pretty disastrous, pretty terrible, but something that is happening already in our planet, which is acid precipitation. Acid precipitation occurs when strong acids fall to Earth as rain, sleet, or snow. I think I have a picture later on that I will show you. Acids in groundwater can cause rock to dissolve, and a small crack in the rock can result in the formation of extensive cave systems carved out over time. And rock materials dissolved in groundwater can be carried and deposited in new locations over time. So sometimes human actions are just going to place some very dangerous chemicals into the environment. And when they release these dangerous chemicals, they are going to affect the environment when changing chemical reactions in the rock, because they can even dissolve the rock that is found in there. And also we humans have put chemical dangerous components in the atmosphere in the rain when we overexplode some industries that I will show you later on. Acids produced by living things can cause chemical weathering. Chemical reactions occur as acids move through tiny spaces in rock material. And as acid seeps deeper, cracks form. Eventually, the rock can break apart. Here we have an example of what acid rain looks like. So when humans start to drop a lot of gases to the atmosphere, all of these dangerous components actually come back down in the shape of acid rain, which is a type of rain that can actually destroy rock, and that it can kill many animals, and of course it can affect our skin and our health in general. So I will see you in the next class, in the live session, but I'll leave you with this phrase. Probably some countries have a lot of economic power, but they have serious environmental problems. And what you are going to see right here is USA and China when acid rain starts to fall down in their countries.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!